Hello, I'm Gustavo Rasetti. Welcome to Changemaker of the Week. In our podcast, we're going to be interviewing real people that are going to be sharing their real stories about how they deal with change. Today, we're going to be talking to Blake Bible. He's an entrepreneur, self-improvement guy, change agent, former CEO of a large startup. So I want Blake to talk about himself and give us a little bit of his story. So who are you, Blake?
First of all, that is a question that I've been trying to answer for as long as I can remember, and I think I will probably continue to be searching for the answer for that until the day I die. I actually don't know who I am today, but I can tell you a little bit about some of the things I've done, and maybe that'll give you a sense.
Go ahead.
Sure. A couple of years ago, I was actually sitting in Chicago in my house on a very cold winter day, a little bit down. I was still recovering from really my first major failure, but it was really a blessing in disguise. And I had this idea for starting a food business. And one day I just decided, you know what, I'm going to pack up my bags and I'm going to move to San Francisco. I'm going to get out of this miserable cold weather and do something instead of thinking. The reason I went out to San Francisco was that I knew that I needed to find a co-founder in order to build this vision for this food company that I wanted to build. And the basic idea was to really change the way that people eat, particularly in big cities, by building a whole new model for food production and food distribution and deliver really healthy food in an on-demand format very quickly and at an affordable price. I had a food background, but I didn't have any technology skills. So I went out to San Francisco and I knew that that's where I had to be to find a co-founder. When I got out there, I just started networking. I dove into the food scene, the tech scene, but very quickly found myself in a situation where I was more or less homeless and facing the question of whether I needed to go back home and literally move in with my mom. Instead of doing that, I decided that I was going to build my own house in order to be able to live affordably in San Francisco. I became obsessed with this idea of tiny houses. And one day I just happened to meet a fellow entrepreneur who owned a wine shop. And 2 weeks later, I managed to convince him to let me build a house in his garden, in his backyard in San Francisco. I've never experienced anything like that. And it took about 6 months, but that was what ultimately allowed me to stay in San Francisco and to start this company. And I slept on plywood for literally for 6 months, no joke, but that's what it took. And eventually I met my co-founder, Joe. He had this brilliant idea for how we could get started without any money. We were eating every single day at Whole Foods for lunch. And his idea was, look, let's start this company by using the Whole Foods salad bar as our kitchen. So we launched our company. We built an app in 2 weeks and we launched. We would hang out at Whole Foods and orders would come in. We would fill those orders by standing in line at the buffet. And then we'd get on a bicycle and go make the deliveries. And that's how Radish started. And after doing that for 3 months, we were able to actually raise money. And then we moved back to Chicago and we worked on building this company for the last 3 years, only recently to sell that company to another wonderful Chicago startup here called Tavala, which is a smart oven company and food subscription company that I recommend everyone check out.
Yeah, I love that story. I love the notion that most entrepreneurs think that I need to raise money, but basically you don't need to raise money. You need to solve your problem. So basically you build your own house in order to avoid that issue of not having a place where to live. But then instead of hiring a chef, you basically outsource your production to Whole Foods. That for me is brilliant. So what drives you?
I think that I have a deep desire to learn. As soon as I stop learning, I tend to lose my interest. I tend to lose that energy. So when we're not experiencing new things, I think that can cause problems.
So tell me, what was the biggest challenge you ever faced and how do you deal with it?
I think the first time that I ever really failed in a big way, I think that in our education system, what I experienced was a sort of tendency for teaching to not be about taking risks and failing, but in fact, the opposite. I think we need the freedom to fail. I think we need that safe space, so to speak, to actually experience failure. For me, it actually didn't happen until I was, I don't know, in my late 20s, because I had taken the safe road, getting a perfect GPA, graduated at the top of my class. But I did that at the cost of not actually pursuing things that were really interesting to me that I was afraid of, because maybe I would fail. So when I finally failed, it was pretty hard. I think everyone needs to fail sooner, faster, if possible, and more.
To your point, I think that the education system is protecting people from failure, but we need to promote failure, because if you don't fail, you're not going to experiment. You mentioned that you had other fears now. Which are those?
Well, I think I'm afraid of not making good use of my time and energy in life. As far as we know, we only live once. It's just the time that we have is so precious. And so because I do spend a lot of time thinking rather than doing, really, I just have to get out, and that's how I move forward. And when I'm not doing that, frankly, I'm not happy. I'm working on a couple different ideas in parallel. The one thing that I'm very interested in right now is tackling what I think is becoming an affordable housing crisis, at least in major cities in this country. And I'm very interested in coming up with a new and completely different way of living. So what can we do to make more affordable housing? And in that process, can we build more community? Can we get more people to connect?
And how do you keep yourself accountable when it comes to launching a new project or a new initiative?
This is something that I struggle with. It used to be just a to-do list, using the calendar and actually really blocking off time. And then I realized that wasn't enough. And I started using a software tool called OmniFocus, which I highly recommend. And now I'm trying to create a system where every day I'm tracking the things in my life that are important. So from fitness, my health, and then the bigger goals, the projects that I'm working on, but also, am I living my life in a valued or principle-based way? And so, did I live courageously today? Or did I live in honesty and integrity today? Was I loving today? For me, at least, if I'm not tracking my progress on a weekly basis and actually looking back, what's working, what's not working, using certain lenses, like what should I do more of, what should I do less of, should I stop something or should I start something, those basic frameworks. And then you decide whether you need to make changes or not.
What advice would you give to those people that are afraid of launching their new projects?
If you have an idea and it's quite specific and you're passionate about it, I think it is important to make any progress you can, as little as it is. You've got to move forward. At some point, you're just going to have to jump off the cliff and make the leap, whatever it is, but continue to push forward week over week or month over month. Otherwise, that idea is going to die, or it's just not going to happen.
So in that direction, what's the thing that you feel most proud of?
The first thing that comes to mind is first business that I started when I was actually in college. It is a nonprofit organization that's still around today, almost 13 years later. It is a training core for social entrepreneurs. The idea is to try to bring together about 100 people at a time, 4 times a year at these institutes around the country. And these are future leaders, people who want to use business or use whatever tools they have to make a difference. So that business has impacted tens of thousands of people around the world who are committed to building something bigger than themselves. And I think that anytime you can have an impact on other people, it's just an incredible experience to know that hopefully I've improved people's lives and will continue to do so.
Definitely, you're an inspiration. I think that great leaders not only are good at leading people, but also developing and inspiring new leaders. And I think you do that. Legacy is not just something that you build, but it's a mindset that you share. And I think that your mindset is really inspirational. So I really want to thank you for joining us. I don't know if you want to say something before we finish this call.
No, I just want to thank you for inviting me to share. I hope that I'm able to help whoever might be listening, and thank you.
Okay, thank you, Blake, and good luck with your new venture. Okay,
Take care.
bye.